Hello, Alder Peckham, can you hear us? All right, we can see you, and I see your mouth moving, but I don't hear you, so we're just gonna work on that for a second.
Saying something now?
Ooh,
We can.
we can hear you through a speaker. Nobody else can, but we can. Secret Pat. Can you speak one more time, Pat? Okay, we made it worse somehow. Yeah, you're coming out of the computer, but not out of the speaker
Sound is
above
just coming
us.
through the CPU, not the overhead.
All right, we're gonna try one more thing before we get started. We really want to hear what you have to say. Okay.
I think it's coming
Yeah,
right here.
yeah, that's the one I hear. All right, Pat, could you say something again?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear him out there in the world?
Testing, testing, testing.
Oh my goodness.
Could be this hard, eh?
Can you hear him a little better?
Cranked up the volume on it.
Okay, all right. I think we're gonna go with it. We've cranked you up. We have a microphone ready for you. So we're gonna get this thing started. All right, good evening, everybody. It is Wednesday, February 16th, 2022, and it is 5 p.m. If you are here, you're at a Plan Commission meeting of the City of Wausau. I will note that everybody here is present. We have one member on WebEx. If there's no opposition, I'm going to move item number 5 up above the public hearing, because we have some folks that want to sound off on that, and I want to make it as easy as possible. So I'm not seeing any opposition from anybody. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda then is to approve the minutes from the January 18th, 2022 meeting. I have a motion by Bulkin to approve. I have a second by Neal. Any discussion? Okay, I'm going to go through the roll call since we have somebody on WebEx. Lindman.
Aye.
Peckham.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Bulkin.
Aye.
Brugman.
Aye.
Bonerman.
Aye.
Rosenberg, aye. Thank you. Those have passed. All right, so now we're going to move, like I said, I'm going to move up the discussion and possible action on designating John Marshall School, that is 1918 Lamont Street, as an historic landmark. I understand there are some folks that would like to talk about this, and while we don't have public comment agendized, I'm going to allow folks to speak, as long as they follow the same comments, the same structure as public comment, so that's 3 minutes, name and address for the record. But before I allow that, I'm going to have Brad Lenz maybe give us a little spiel on this.
All right, thank you.
Going to make it hard for you.
All right, I think we're set. All right, so this item comes to us from the Historic Preservation Commission, and what it is a potential local landmark for John Marshall School. And the Preservation Commission felt like it should be a landmark. It's part of their duties to look for landmarks throughout the city and discuss, what their historical value is and whether something should be landmarked or not. Our ordinance, does say that landmarking historic assets is in the public interest, and it's, within the city's jurisdiction to do that if we feel it's necessary. So they held a public hearing and felt that it was a historic asset and it should be landmarked. The process is to send their recommendation to us here at Plan Commission. We have a set of criteria to look at, and from there we send the recommendation to the City Council for their final, vote on whether to landmark it or not. I guess since the public hearing, there was a letter that you should have received from the school district who owns the property, and they are not in favor of the landmarking at this particular time, at least. So that has happened since the public hearing at Historic Preservation. So I guess I'll just leave it at that for now and can answer questions as they come up.
Okay, maybe before we start asking questions, I know there are a couple folks here who would like to speak on this. So if that's you, you can approach the podium, name and address, and you get 3 minutes. Let us know what you think.
Thomas Brown, 715 North Fifth Avenue. I live a block and a half from the school. I agree with the school district. I think it's way too early to designate it as a historic landmark. It's a nice building, but I just drove by G.D. Jones this morning, and it's a pretty impressive elementary school, and if something like that needs to be done to John Marshall, I would hate to have that hogtied by a historic preservation restriction. So I would vote against this idea, take it back and work with the school board who owns the property.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak? I see some nudging back there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gary Gusselman, 319 Park Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin. I'm here to urge you to support landmarking of the John Marshall School. You have the criteria in front of you that you should be looking at in Brad's memo. I think that it has been, in addition to the historic nature of this building, 100 years, it has been a key part of that neighborhood, that whole district, that southeast side, for 100 years. And that school, in addition to being a place of education, has been a community center for that whole district down there. It's been part of that, part of the lifeblood of that area for 100 years. If you look at a map of 1920, when that 22, when that school was built, hardly a lot of vacant lots. Hardly, maybe half of the area was developed at that time. A lot of the development since then has used that school, has used that as a community center, as a very vital part of that community. Of course, it has architectural features. There's a lot of history. The Preservation Commission has certainly looked at that very thoroughly. I'm just here to emphasize again the fact that it has been a very key part of that community in the southeast side. And I think that the whole issue of retrofitting, some of the same arguments that we may have had with Grant School. Grant School is now a landmark, but I think some of the same arguments can be made for that. Grant School played a key part in that neighborhood. John Marshall plays a key part in that neighborhood. And schools can be retrofit. Schools can be looked at. The historical nature of schools can be kept. Longfellow is a key part. Longfellow School, now an administration building, a school, 1894, still being used within the community. And I think historic buildings can be reused and retrofit for the benefit of the community as well as the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome.
Hey, John Creasure, Wausau School Board member, address is 151008 Juniper Lane, Wausau. I guess you guys are in receipt of the letter that the school board sent. And I guess I would just bring up some items. I would agree with this gentleman over here that spoke, is it really handcuffs the district and the community and what can be done. The cost to renovate buildings is extremely higher than to, build a new building outright. That cost is very vast and high, and it would cause the district and the community to make some different decisions if we were to designate that building as a historic building. We might decide that we're no longer going to utilize, that facility, or that the cost to renovate is too high. And really, obviously, we're trying to bring buildings up to 21st century technology and education standards, and in a facility like that, to do that and renovate is a pretty big cost, and we have to get taxpayers, to be able to join on with that. So it's something that should be taken into consideration. The other thing is shifting demographics in the community. You guys see the shifting demographics that are happening out west. Declining enrollment that's taking place, which is just a function of baby boomers and Xers getting older, getting out of the system, families not having as many children. A lot of things that the district's facing over the next 10 years, you guys will face, every industry in this entire community will face in terms of labor shortages and things of that nature. This all plays a very big role in what we're going to be determining over the next 5 to 10 years with that district footprint. Most districts our size with around 6,000 to 8,000 students generally have only 5 to 6 elementary schools. We have 13. So we have a big we have a lot ahead of us from a district perspective to consider, and doing this really limits our options. So just things to take into consideration when you're thinking about this. So
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Christine Martins, 1228 Arthur Street in Wausau, and I do sit on the Historic Preservation Commission. And just very simply, we wanted to landmark this building because of its 100th anniversary. Seemed like a great time to do that. And also to get out in front of what could, of its demise, quite possibly. Instead of coming at it from behind and trying to save it like we did with Grant. The time to landmark it is now, before it becomes an issue. Very simply. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this issue? Okay. Thank you, everyone who spoke. We now have some discussion and action to take. Anyone want to start us off? With a motion or with, yes, Alder Neal.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Well, I'll make a motion to approve the landmarking request.
Can I have a second
go
before
ahead
we
and get a
start
second, then I
discussing?
continue.
Anyone with a second? Or are we gonna? One last time, anyone want to second this, or is there maybe an alternative motion that needs to be made? Okay, it seems that we are letting that motion die for lack of a second. Is there a different motion that we'd like to make?
I have one.
All right, Alder Peckham.
I would move to table the request for 6 months to give the school district time to evaluate their buildings and then plan to vote on it at that time.
All right, so
Could give
Alder,
them enough time to do their evaluation and still maintain some momentum on this.
all right, so we have a motion from Alder Peckham to table the item for 6 months so that the school district has time to consider their inventory of buildings. I might take the liberty of also maybe having our staff converse with their staff about this. Do I have a second? All right, we got a second from Borneman. All right, let's start talking, folks. Who wants to go first? It looks like Mr. Neal.
Well, it might be moot, my speaking at this point, because I'm still speaking in support of the request for landmarking. So let me just say, and I have no prepared, words, but Wausau is a small town, small footprint, and, over the decades, it has seen a lot of loss of historic architecture. I've seen the photos. These are before I ever moved here, 23 years ago. And when it's gone, it's gone. A community's history, its visible history is something that's important to maintain. And as I said, when it's gone, it's gone. You need to have a protective stance, I think, to preserve this kind of stuff. I see photos of the old, City Hall, and it just breaks my heart. I see photos of the old, Plumer Mansion or whatever it was, and it's gone, Things like this is just, it's so sad to see, and all that's left is two-dimensional representations of what used to be, the backbone of the look of this town. I know that, I know what the school board's concerns and discussions are going to be. We kind of heard it before, and we know that consolidation is going to be part of that. And what we're going to end up hearing is, again, those neighborhood groups coming in saying, now my children have to, instead of walking 3 blocks to school, will have to go 11 blocks to school. You're going to hear that over and over again. And that's the thing that we will end up having to discuss in the future when proposals come forward from the school board. That's just a prediction that I know is going to happen. This will probably happen after I'm gone from here, but that will happen. So at that point, that hot potato is going to be handled by other committees and by council. And I think that now is the time, as one of our commenters said, now is the time to kind of head this off, because otherwise we're going down the road of losing our heritage in terms of architecture in this town. And there has to be more creative solutions to things than having that be our option. So that's what I have to say about that. And as I said, I guess we can't really vote on that tonight. Maybe we can vote on it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this? I guess I want to thank the Alder for making this motion. I think it gives us an opportunity to work collaboratively with the school district on this discussion. I do agree there probably are unique things that we can talk about. It's hard to do that when we've already made that policy. I would hate to lose that too. I grew up in that neighborhood. I still live there. It's been a big part of my history. When my dad was first elected to city council in 1996, he had a lady calling him to complain about City Hall being torn down from the 400 block that happened before he was born. So I understand that we have a lot of passion about our history here. But I do think working with the school district is probably the right move for us. To at least have those conversations. And I do think we might still end up with the same topic before us in the same way. But I like the idea of being more collaborative. Does anybody else want to speak? I'm actually surprised nobody else wants to speak. Yes, Mr. Borneman.
Yeah, I'm really reluctant for us to, as a body, or for the city as a body, to be forcing this on another elected body, what they need to do with their building. It is their building, and I understand the historic significance of the building, and what it could be and everything, but I'm in favor of a 6 months is not an eternity to try to work together with the school board to come up with, for them to, like, what we need to procedurally address this as our, question A, the orderly use of this property. Yeah, I don't want to, I'm really reluctant to force it on them as to what they need to do with this, and I think that's, if we approve this, that's what that would be doing.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Yes, Mr. Bergerman.
Well, Katie, I grew up in the same neighborhood, going to the same school, and, I look back on it fondly, but I would agree with Commissioner Borneman. It's difficult when we want to force this upon those partners. We went through the same discussion when Grant came through here, and it seemed like a overreaction because we were concerned about where that direction was going. And I agree. I think we need to be more collaborative with our partners on that, and not use other tactics to try and force what may or may not happen in the future. It seems preemptive here, and I don't know, not neighborly in my mind, but it's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Alder Peckham, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I think it's a sound idea, gives the, school district a fair shot. If it ends up they need another month or something, they can come back and ask for that, but
Okay.
I think 6 months is a good target. Gives them something to work toward.
All right, thank you. If there's no other commentary, I'm going to take the roll call vote. I will start with Bordeman.
Aye.
Brueggemann.
No.
So just to clarify, we are voting in favor of giving them 6 months so that we can work together. So just making sure everyone's aware. Okay, Bolkin.
Aye.
Neal.
No.
Peckham.
All right.
Lindman.
No.
Rosenberg. Aye. I wasn't keeping count, but I believe we have tabled this for 6 months.
4-3, I believe.
Yep, 4-3. Thank you. Thank you, clerking. I was busy reading names. All right, we will see this again in 6 months. Thank you very much. All right, we are going back to the order of the agenda, and we now have a public hearing. This is a request to approve the conditional use at 1730 Business Highway 51 to allow for an addition of an order board sign for a second drive-through lane in a suburban mixed-use zoning district. This is for Taco Bell. I believe, is this Sam? Why don't you give us a little spiel before we open her up?
Yeah, this one's quick. So it's same as other conditional use permits. This is the fact-finding public hearing part of it, and then we come back the next month to vote on it. All it is for the sign. The drive-throughs permitted by right. There was one concern from a neighboring property owner about a shared access easement, which that's kind of something that's between property owners and is independent of this conditional use permit request. In the packet, you can see pictures of what it looks like, and it's pretty straightforward. All they're asking is for just another sign for their second lane.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, the public hearing is open. If you are here to speak on this, you can approach the podium, give your name and address, and you'll get 3 minutes.
Larry Nigber, 1740 Business 51 North, at business. My regards to this particular request from them would be the fact that when on this easement that we have, a 60-foot easement running parallel to their property line and mine, that at times I am not able to use that easement because it's blocked off with traffic entering into that drive-through. Right now, they have one drive-through lane. They intend to make 2. Right now, there's about 6 to 10 cars coming out of that drive-through lane into the easement area that completely blocks it off. Now, his thinking is, somebody's thinking is that they got a lot of business coming, and then they're gonna have need for another order board over there. And my thinking is that we're gonna, instead of having one lane going into that easement, blocking it off, we're gonna have two lanes going into that easement, blocking it off. Big issue. This has been a thorn in my side for 40 years. It's time to get it resolved. There's another thing that come into my notice here. I had it surveyed last week, the property line, and he's encroaching on this easement with parking lanes, which is a no-no also. That has to be eradicated, those lanes up there. You can see on the map up there. That's paramount to land grabbing on the Old West. Put up a fence in somebody's property and claim it as your own until somebody finds out differently. That's what I have to offer today.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on behalf of the public hearing? Okay, then I guess I'll ask one last time if there's anybody here who would like to speak on the public hearing for the conditional use at 1730 North Business Highway 51. Okay, this public hearing is now closed. We are now on to the discussion and possible action part of this, approving a conditional use at 1730 North Business Highway 51 to allow for an addition of an order board sign for a second drive-through lane in a suburban mixed-use zoning district. Do I have a motion by anybody? Yes.
I would move to approve the request.
All right, we have a motion to approve the request by Alder Neal. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alder Peckham. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Neal.
Sure, I mean, I go through there quite often myself, and have been in the long strung-out line, waiting to get my crunchy tacos. And I'm sure what the requester is trying to accomplish here is simply to have two short stubby lines instead of one long strung-out line. And that's just, the basic idea behind the whole thing. Whether or not to the west, if there's concerns about parking spaces and whatnot, that's a whole other issue and not what we're talking about tonight. But this really is an opportunity to relieve some congestion in that parking lot by having two lines down there, two shorter lines to go through the drive-up. So there you go, I support it.
Okay. Anyone? Yes, Mr. Borneman.
I just have a question on this. Do we have a motion? Was there a motion made for approval?
Yes.
At this meeting, or do we have to have a subsequent meeting on this?
I made the motion.
But don't we?
It does say that we we'll do this at the March.
Oh, that's right, there is no
meeting.
motion to approve, right? Because we'd have to come back to do that?
Yes.
Okay. I withdraw my motion, but my comment stays.
Okay. Alder Peckham, I am assuming you're fine with that since the order of business is to approve or deny at the March meeting.
Fair enough.
Okay. Any more comments or other questions that we need answered before we get to the next meeting? Is there anything we need?
Sure.
Mr. Borneman.
Maybe just when I looked at this, I kind of wondered how they ingress and egress this property. And then I'm learning that there's an easement on the other property. I'm assuming it's a recorded easement? That maybe we could get some clarification on the other issue as far as the parking encroaching and, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can do some more investigation on that. I think Sam had made the point.
Okay.
Regarding this particular issue, it's not necessarily germane, but
Yeah.
if it helps provide some background, we can have our surveyor take a look at it.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments or things we need before the next meeting in order to make a decision?
Yes.
Oh.
I don't have a vendetta against Taco Bell. But what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. As far as the sign is concerned, I understand that. That's not a big thing for me. But blocking the easement and marking property that belongs to me that I pay taxes on as their own by putting the lane stripes in it, parking stripes. That can't be done.
Thank you.
So until that's rectified, I would say I'd vote no on the sign, just general purpose. But if everything else is taken care of, I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you. I think you have the right people here that are hearing that we can investigate outside of Plan Commission.
There's someone from the audience.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian Davies, 13489 182nd Avenue, Elk River, Minnesota. I just want to mention that Chairman was correct about the intent of the lane is to reduce that flow. One of the things, we're definitely willing to work with the furniture store on the issue with the parking spaces. When we purchased the restaurants, I think about 6 years ago, it had already had that in place. And when we redid the parking lot a couple of years ago, we restriped it the same way it was. The survey that we have from the original build shows the easement, and it shows the parking spaces through the easement at that time, and it says that they're not counted in the parking count for the restaurant. We're happy to discuss with them what we can do differently. If there's a different way we lane out the traffic and have the flow different, we're happy to approach that, so.
Okay, thank you. All right. Again, we got the right people here for that discussion, so we'll follow up outside of this meeting. Yes, Mr. Neal.
Madam Mayor, I'll just add, thank you for whoever took care of the big pothole there as you drive in, because that was kind of scary at times. As I mentioned to the mayor before the meeting started, I have another engagement that I have to leave, so I make my exit now. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you for joining us.
It's not Taco Tuesday, Tom.
We know where you're going. All right, any further discussion, or otherwise we will talk about this next month? Okay, looks like that's what we're doing. Thank you very much. All right, we are now on to item number 4, discussion and possible action approving the Alexander Davis preliminary plat, formerly Wausau Center Mall site. We have a presentation, so I will let you take it away.
I guess we have some representatives here. I don't know if they did plan to go through a presentation. This was given at the CISM meeting.
Sure.
We did. My name's Tom Renz with REI, 4080 North 20th Avenue, Wausau. I'm here on behalf of Wausau Opportunity Zone. With me is Joe Mello with Ruder Ware to help answer any questions that you may have. What I did is I colored up the map because I just want to give you kind of a brief history, and it'll answer some of the questions relative to some of the staff concerns regarding some of the outlots and the ownership and kind of the direction that we're moving in. So next slide, please. There you go. So back when I was in high school, the city bought all of this property back in the 70s and 80s to build the mall. And when that was done, it was all one big lot or one big plat. Next slide, please. This is what it looked like in 1974. Here's 2nd Street, 3rd Street, 4th Street, Washington, Jackson. So what we're trying to do is get back to that street configuration and put the streets back to where they were. And you can see what was taking place. There's, parking lots, some of the buildings. So from this, we know the street grades, we know the street utilities will all work out. It's been proven in the past. We're going to go back to a similar configuration. Next slide, please. So when this took place, when WAS approached the current owners of the mall and the city to buy the property, they hired a firm called Epstein Ewan out of Madison, an architectural firm. They came up with a plan of how this property could look after the mall was demoed. This is the parking ramp number 1 on the west side. This is home furniture. Here's parking ramp number 2 on the southeast side. So we're looking at blocks 2, 3, 4, and 5 for future building, as well as block 1. And this would be a pedestrian bridge that's being considered. The location isn't fixed as to where it would tie, but it'd be someplace along the west boundary of the property. Next slide, please. The city had hired Tool Design out of Madison to help with what the street configuration would look like. So those folks put together, and they're still continuing to work on some concepts of what streetscapes would look like. But we know we went from an anticipated 66-foot right-of-way or 60-foot right-of-way to a 78-foot right-of-way. And so what we did is we took their initial plan, we laid it into the plan to see how it could fit and how it could work. And so that is this configuration. Again, that streetscape isn't done and hasn't been approved. I believe SISM, and maybe you folks have looked at it, but there's still some work to do on what the final design will look like. Next slide, please. This was important to remember, and if you could kind of store these colors in the back of your mind, the blue is everything that's owned by the city of Wausau. The green is everything that's owned by WAS. And you can kind of see where we've got some kind of funky configurations of where the lines are following the building and some of what's taking place today. Next slide, please. This slide's important. This area is, the yellow is air rights that are owned by WAS. That's above the parking ramp, so they have the ability to build buildings above that. And then the purple, home has a ground lease on that piece of property from WAS. Next slide, please. So when you kind of work from the southwest corner up, we're going to dedicate a piece of property right here. That was really never dedicated when Forest and First was, so that little outlot is just kind of cleaning up some title work. Another piece, this little green piece up here, I think we have it out as outlot 6. That was kind of left behind in title, and so we're identifying it so we can help clean up agreements and help identify that property, because there's some very lengthy legal descriptions that help describe that. And that piece also houses the ramp that gets up to the second story, up to JCPenney for fire access. And so that ramp may or may not stay, but we felt it was important to identify that parcel. Again, this is the air rights that are currently owned by WAS. This green parcel is what would be left owned by the city. And notice there's a little chunk here that air rights are owned by WAS, but there have to be some deed work back and forth relative to that. This yellow area, the city owned this whole chunk. When we dedicate the street through here, that leaves this as a remnant parcel. That land will be used by Home Furniture for their commercial loading dock here, the pedestrian loading dock here. These outlets on this side, remember WAS owned up to the face of the Penny's building, so we'd suggest that WAS continues to own that, because that's at the same level that their air rights meet. So as this property's developed, these areas can become seating areas or become part of the future development of the air rights above the parking ramp. Lot 3 is pretty self-explanatory. I think there was a staff suggestion about bringing this, squaring this right away off. We'd like to keep it as we've got it shown. The reason being is that we're working with Home Furniture on what this building face looks like, and their entrance to their facility is right in this location. Another notable point is, we're extending Home's land lease up 7 feet. The purpose of that is there's going to be building fixtures on the face of that building. And so we want to make sure that those fixtures are within the home lease parcel. This little outlet gets left over. Again, WAS owns it, and we had talked conceptually about potentially a right-in into the parking ramp, so maybe this becomes right-away at a future date. And as this whole street plan develops, that parcel could turn into right-away dedication. The lot 4, the yellow parcel, is really kind of what's driving our schedule. There's an interested buyer for that piece of property. They'd like to get in the ground October of 2022. And so in order to keep track on, we have to get contaminated soil removed. We're working with DNR on the closure of that. We're very close to having site closure. And this same party is also interested in lot 5. And so how this property develops is happening and moving faster than maybe we all collectively had anticipated, but that's a great thing for us. And then parking ramp, this blue, that'll stay the same. That'll stay in city ownership. We've included it in the plat because we felt one big drawing with all these parcels will help with agreements and understandings. So nothing's really happening with this other than we just included it in the plat to help clean up future documents moving forward. Next slide, please. So staff had some questions relative to street grades. Those will be addressed with future city engineering department design efforts and a potential consultant. The purpose of the outlets, as we discussed, of why we'd like to keep the outlets where they are. The PUD amendment, we'll do that as we submit for lot 4 and for each lot moving forward. With those built when we have more concrete building plans of what that building's going to look like. Utility plan design review, same thing, that'll be incorporated with the street designs as a future engineering department effort. Next slide, please. Parkland dedication, we understand that there'll be a $200 fee per living unit. At this point, other than the conceptual drawing from the architects, it's hard for us to say exactly how many living units are going to be within this plat. And so we'll have to have some discussion about how do we determine that and how do we assess the correct fee. And maybe there's a credit given or we pay upon future development or some agreement, so we're accurately paying for each living unit. Squaring off the right-of-way, we talked about that. We'd like to keep it as we've got it shown because that's right near the main entrance for the home facility, so we've got room to do the right thing at the front door of that facility. Easements, this is a preliminary plat, so the only thing we know is that some things will change slightly, and it gives us time to pull easements together as the street design, utility design gets pulled together, as future agreements, as we figure out where that pedestrian bridge will cross First Street. We can pin down where that easement will be. There'll be some agreements between Lot 3 and the home parcel relative to, getting into the front door and going across parcels. But again, all these things in the door locations are all being planned now. So those will show up on the final plat. And then the stormwater management, same will be true when we come through. The city will be handling stormwater management within the dedicated right-of-ways, and each lot will handle their stormwater management with their individual designs, and that'll be happening through the PUD process. So with that, that's short and sweet. Oh, this is just, this is really the genesis of this whole project. So this drawing was put together back in 2020. This is the home furniture loading dock area. And so until we had home furniture on board, it was really tough to take the next step with this project. And so their interest was, how are we going to get our semis in and out? The semis will be in the yellow area. And then how do we get pedestrians loaded? And that would be in this area. And so we warped the street through here. We're showing a sidewalk on this side. That's going to go away because we really don't want pedestrians mixing with this traffic. But this illustrates how the semis, right now they come down first, turn into the site and do a UE, completely turn around and get back in here. We're asking that they'd come down Washington, turn down Second, come in, back in, and then take off. And if Forest gets to be a two-way street, they can go right or left, heading out. So I think I lied last time, it was the last slide, but this time I think I mean it. Unless somebody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer it.
All right, any questions from folks?
I might have some.
Oh, all right. You might have some posed questions or comments?
Yeah.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay. All right, thanks. I guess, in my comments in the staff review, this plan commission, so I figured this might be the time to bring it up. I did bring up the easements, and, this had been being shown on a previous plan, and Tom addressed those, or at least one of them, maybe two. There will be an easement between First and Second somewhere across Lot 2, but that's not being shown now. There's another potential easement I think you talked about from the front door to Second Street. Mm-hmm. That was another easement. I guess if we go back to some of the earlier concepts, or even, when we're working with the tool design, there was a potential for Fourth Street extension. I know that's kind of up in the air, but that's not being shown on the plat yet. I don't know if that's going to be in the final plat. I guess the final plat, Tom, do you have a schedule for when that you propose that coming back to the city?
The final plat's really going to be driven by how quick the design on lots 4 and 5 happen. And I think also how quick the design on the streets happens, because it'd be nice to have the utility design done before we present the final plat, so we know because at one point myself and Alan talked about maybe a water line extending through here someplace for a water connection. If that were the case, it'd be nice to have that easement shown on the plat as well. Again, for clarity, to have all the easements on one drawing and have one drawing in the file that reflects everything. And I think the pedestrian bridge, I've got a note on the preliminary plat that we know we're going to have an access easement across here someplace. I just don't know where, and that's moving along. We're along pretty well. We're getting through schematic design. getting closer to bringing something in front of the city for review and discussion, this spring, late spring. So my hope is late summer that we would have the final plat in front of you. It's a long answer to a short question. And relative to Fourth, the plan that we saw that the developer's looking at is 2 U-shaped buildings, and this would still remain an open corridor, so you could still see through green space.
I mean, I think the initial plan at one point was to get people actually through there from the parking structure up to, Washington to continue on to the Grand Theater and 400 block area. Again, it's not being shown as an easement now. It seems like that's sort of going away just for people's attention. But the other thing I brought up in the review letter was the curved street, and as was mentioned, the street hasn't been designed yet. This is the right-of-way, but it seems like the right-of-way is going to dictate that that street is going to be curved. I mean, you ran turning radii on there, so, in the spirit of reestablishing the downtown street grid, that doesn't necessarily look or function like a downtown street. I mean, it's meant for cars to be able to turn quickly and easily, and that kind of, I guess in my opinion, downtown street should be for the pedestrians, making it easier for them. Squaring that off, we're not dictating that the street be curved as well. I mean, we could still potentially design a curve, I guess. I don't think that's the best design solution, but, if it were squared off, it would actually give more space and more flexibility there than what's being shown. So I guess I'll probably continue to say those things when the final plat comes through if they're not addressed. But those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay, anyone on this body have questions or comments, or is there a motion that somebody wants to make?
Motion.
All right, we have a motion. I'm assuming it is a motion to approve the Alexander Davis preliminary plat, formerly, all right, we have a second by Bulkin. Any comments here or questions? I'm not seeing anybody with anything else to say, so I will start with Lindman.
Aye.
Peckham.
Aye.
Bulkin.
Aye.
Brueggemann.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye. I'm sorry.
Rosenberg, aye. Thank you. That passes unanimously, and we will see you back here, I'm sure.
Thanks for everybody's time.
All right, last item here, we have next meeting date, March 15th. I would take a motion to adjourn. Got a motion by Bulkin, second by Brueggemann. Anyone in opposition? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.